What I learned is successful people are willing to do what unsuccessful people are not. So I'm successful because I'm willing to do what you ain't willing to do. I'm willing to get up early. I'm willing to stay late. I'm willing to do that over again. And when I don't feel like doing it, I get up and I do it again. And that difference between me and you. I'm gonna keep going when I don't feel like going. You wanna go as long as it's comfortable and convenient. But then you wonder why you ain't got what I got. You ain't going where I'm going.
Welcome to Closing the Gap Podcast, where we strive to give you the truth about wealth. I am your host, Mr. Eddie Richardson, here with our host and owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. Drum roll, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton. How you doing this side?
Hey, blessed and highly favored.
Amen. Always great to hear those words, and want to let you all know that you're tuned in to another righteous and holy episode. And today we want to strive to do what we always do, but we vary in some of the topics that we give you and the perspective that we strive to give you as we talk about faith and finance, because there is a growing chasm, a growing gap in the transfer of wealth, the accumulation of wealth in the United States and pretty much the world. We see the divide between the haves and the have-nots growing. We see a depletion of the proverbial middle class that used to exist in the United States in particular. And so in order to combat that, we come here every week to give you knowledge, wisdom, and an understanding of the financial advisement, and also from spiritual insight of how you can govern your life to help make sure that you manage what God has given you already, and that you are able to achieve the goals that you have set for yourself as well, because we believe that you have been endowed with certain knowledge from God, you being a creation of God, and the knowledge that God has given you a desire to do better in your life and to grow and to have your children be well, and your children's children, and those of you that do not have children, you want your community to be well, and those that you are around to be well. And so that's our desire too, is that all of us are well. All of us have what God desires for us to have, and that we're able to grow it and then be able to sustain within our community the wealth and our faith. But most importantly, you need to make sure that you have a good relationship with God. And that's always the foundation for what we do. We believe here at Closing the Gap Podcast that, without God, we are nothing. Without having faith in Him and that belief in His Son, Jesus Christ, then we won't be able to grow and do the things that we have thoughts of in our mind, right? Because those thoughts, we believe, come from God. And if those thoughts come from God, then you must go and speak to God about how you can grow those thoughts, that those things can be materialized. And so that's what we want you to do. We want you to grow. We want you to be fruitful, and to make sure that in order to do that, know God, and in knowing God, realize that God will help give you the plan that you need to be able to achieve the goals and reach the destination in your faith and your finances that people want to go with.
Absolutely. It's always, Mama told me a long time ago, you keep God first, let everything else follow. So at the end of the day, life tends to take us away from that a little bit. We all get, consumed with the ways of the world to a certain extent, and, just living and everybody's trying to survive, and, trying to, make a little bit more here and there, trying to make ends meet here and there, trying to take care of families and kids and loved ones, and, have a little piece of the American dream along the way. We all want to have nice homes, nice cars, and, nice things. But at the end of the day, the most important thing to always remember is, your relationship with Christ first and foremost. Seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and His righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. So I think, always remembering that and keeping the main thing, as they say, is the most important thing. And I think if we do a better job with that, and everything else gets a little bit easier. I ain't saying it's going to be easy, but it gets a little bit easier, because I do know that, of course, He'll give you peace in the middle of the storm, and peace that surpasses all understanding, even when you're dealing with the financial struggles, even when you're dealing with the health struggles and the family struggles and the things that, we all deal with and go through in this world and on a day-to-day basis. So, understanding that you're not alone, I think is one of the key things that, I've learned and, from working with people over, my time of 20 plus years of being a financial advisor, that a lot of times people walk in the doors, they think that, man, it's just me. I'm the only one dealing with this. I'm behind. I'm the only one behind. I haven't done what I need to do. And, the reality is, I mean, most of us in the same boat. All of us usually in the same place. There may be a few of us that's done a little bit better, a little bit worse, but, most people right there somewhere in the middle. And, the good thing I always like to remind people and tell them is that most people are doing enough to get where they want to be. It's just they haven't created a plan of action, and the opportunities they're participating in are not being maximized to get them where they want to go. So usually you're doing enough because you're working. And because you're working, you got Social Security been taking out your check. And that means you're paying into a retirement system. So that means you're going to have something that comes back at the end of the day. Most people are involved in a 401k at work. So they have, some type of contribution going in. It may not be enough. Sometimes people have too much, too little, but they usually have something going in. So, most people are participating in something on accident. And over time, of course, time being the greatest factor in making money, it puts them in a situation where they have something to stand on. The problem is they just don't know what they're standing on. They don't know if that table is a little shaky or that table is going to be firm. But they standing on a table. And what we want to do is, of course, and what we do at Hamilton Wealth Advisors, obviously, is to help reaffirm them and reassure them and make sure they stand on solid ground and let them know exactly what they need to be contributing to their plan to maximize the matching benefits, to help them understand what their pension and how it works and how to maximize the benefits that come from it, how to maximize Social Security, when to take Social Security. So we can take what you're already doing and put a plan of action around it and let you know exactly what you need to do to get where you want to be. Now it reaffirms you, it conditions you, and it helps to, bring a light, to a dark path, in a lot of situations, because most people just don't know what to do. It's not that they're not willing to a lot of times, is they just don't know. And the fear of the unknown is what keeps people from making a lot of decisions. It's that, paralysis by analysis. They get to looking at it, and most people have a fear of numbers. I learned early on that I have a propensity for math. Math has always been a very strong subject of mine from a child, and that's just an area of gifting that I was always good in. But I learned in school, everybody wasn't gifted the same way. So a lot of people shied away from math. They didn't like math, and they didn't want to, indulge in the numbers the way I did. So, it put them in a situation where they avoided it. And when you avoid the numbers, you avoid the future of what your life is going to look like. Because if you don't know the numbers, then you don't know the future. The numbers will actually tell you what the future is going to be. Because if there ain't no numbers in the future, you won't have a future. And, ironically, that's why, many of the studies today have shown that more people fear death. I mean, more people actually fear running out of money than fear death now, which is, ironic. But it's that fear of numbers. It's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of actually looking at their situation and have to take accountability and responsibility for where they are and where they will be in the future. Because most of us like to ignore things when we don't want to address it. We want to, like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore that for the day. I'm going to worry about tomorrow when it gets here. I don't want to take a look at that because I really don't want to know how bad it is. I really don't want to look under the hood. I really don't want to check and see why that check engine light is on because I'm scared of what I might find. And then we've all been in those situations where the check engine light comes on your car. And, sometimes been lucky enough to where you see that, oh man, it was just a sensor malfunction. I remember one time it used to be, I don't think they have this issue no more, where your gas tank wasn't on tight enough. And the gas cap would actually cause your check engine light to come on because it wasn't on tight enough. So, that you had that relief. That, whew, man, thank you, Jesus. It wasn't nothing too sensitive and too serious. It was just something that was a small fix. But I had to get it checked out. Same way we go to the doctor when something start bothering us. And of course, your mind start playing tricks on you. Everybody start chat GPT and Googling, man, what are the symptoms and signs of this? And I always say you're going down that rabbit hole of, man, what you may have. You see the commercials that come on TV, and it's telling you every symptom and everything. You're like, man, do I have that?
Yeah, that,
Is that me?
yeah.
Then you like, man, like, no, I'm okay. And then
Mm-hmm.
you start going on, and then finally, hopefully, you go to the doctor and actually get yourself checked out and find out, oh, it's actually not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and those are things that I've learned as I've gotten older because I have strains and things that I didn't have when I was younger. You know, I was saying, you know, I can move a little too quick one day, and then I don't feel it till the next day, and I'm like, man, why is my arm bothering me? I can't move my arm. My arm is sore. Like, what did I do? You know, I wake up with those things. Well, I didn't wake up with that issue,
Right.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, I just have those bumps and bruises and aches and pains, and now, as you got older, that attrition is added up over time, and now you feel things differently. But you have to get those things checked out to make sure. And it's been many times, of course, when you've gone through things and you go to the doctor and you get checked out, you know what? You're okay. You just need to drink a little more water. You need a little more fruits and vegetables, or you just need a little rest. It's just something that's going to heal on its own. And, you know, your finances is the same way.
Mm-hmm.
You have to stop and take time to take a look at them
Yeah.
because, you know, money is not everything, but it's definitely something.
Yeah.
And money does make life easier.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the end all be all. It's not the ruler. It shouldn't be your ultimate decision maker.
Right.
But you do need it because it provides options and opportunities. It can put you in a situation where you can decide what you want to do, when you want to do, and how you want to do it. And if you don't have any, you will be told what to do, when to do, and how to do.
Yeah.
So, it's better to sit down and have the conversation. It's better to sit down and do the evaluation with a financial advisor so you can understand where you are so you can eliminate the fear. And once you know where you are, now you know what you need to do. And you can be informed on just how to do it. So now you can make that decision to say, you know what, okay, well, Mr. Hamilton said if I start saving a little bit more than what I'm doing, or Mr. Hamilton said, you know what, you're saving enough, you just need to reallocate
Mm-hmm.
the way you invested in order to get a better return on your investment, and you'll be okay. Well, once you know that, now you can take action and be more confident in moving forward and be more free with the way you live.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And speaking of that, we're knowing more, having an understanding, those fear of numbers, those things that you spoke about, directly reflects Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 12 that says, wisdom is a defense, money is a defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to those that have it. So you need wisdom to protect yourself, you know, in situations of life. You need money to protect yourself in situations of life. But most importantly, with your money, you need wisdom. You need
Yes.
to understanding, how do I handle it? Because if you have money and don't have wisdom, you will possibly run out of money. And that's what
Yes.
we want to talk about today. We don't want you to ever run dry. Right? The title of this show today is Never Run Dry. Um, when you have a full understanding of your finances, having a plan, understanding Social Security, understanding pension plans, understanding your retirement, understanding your goals and aspirations for what you want to do in your life, then you will understand how to manage your money in the correct way so that your money never runs out. Because when you had the money and you had the knowledge, that's the greatest thing in the world. You know what I'm saying? And it's bad to have, knowledge and not have money, and to have money and not have knowledge. But that's why we come here at Closing the Gap podcast to try to give you, well, not try, let me retract that. No, we come here to give you that. Um, Mr. Hamilton and Hamilton Wealth Advisors are trained professionals in what they do. They are the experts in what they do. And like we always do, we want you to go to the website, Hamilton Wealth ADV, schedule your consultation if you have not yet. And somebody from Hamilton Wealth Advisor team will get in contact with you, set up your appointment, and do the consultation with you about who you are and what your goals are, and will lay out a plan that specifically fits you, custom, tailor made. This is not cookie cutter. This is not something that you just download off the internet. This is not something that, as now, as you said, people just go to AI and look up things, and go to Google and look up things. But Google, AI, all these different chat bots, they don't account for the nuances of who you are. Because when we're looking at you, when we're speaking to you, then Hamilton Wealth Advisors, as talking to people, makes the greatest difference because there's a certain energy, a spirit that when two or three are gathered together, God is in the midst. See, when we do things on the internet, we just get information. But that information has no soul, has no feeling, has no true understanding of what's going on. It's like when you're sitting and talking to a person and you can tell by their body movements, their mannerisms, their facial expressions, what they said, how they meant what they said. It's hard to read somebody through a text message,
Yes.
through just the information. But when you go and sit down with Hamilton Wealth Advisor, with an advisor from that team, they will be able to relate to you, and then you can relate to them. You can tell whether or not this person knows what they are talking about, whether they are just filibustering around about financial information. But they can talk to you about you, talk to you about what your goals are. And then what we also want you to realize is that being that Hamilton Wealth Advisors is an advising company that is led by God, led by the Spirit of God, and striving first and foremost to please God in everything that they do, then you have that extra insurance and the extra assurance that you're not going to be taken advantage of. So that's what we want you to do. Make sure, if you have not, reach out to Hamilton Wealth Advisors and set your consultation today, because we want you to have the right plan. We want you to have the knowledge and the wisdom to work that plan out as well. And I have no doubt about it that Hamilton Wealth Advisors is the advising company for you, because we don't want you to ever run dry. God never intended for us
Mm-hmm.
to receive what God gives to us and for those things to run out. Throughout scripture, there are example after example that God made sure that God's people were supplied for,
Mm.
that they were supplied for in food, clothing, and money.
Mm-hmm.
Never ran out. One of my favorite stories in the Bible is that after the 400 years of slavery that the Israelites suffered in Egypt under Pharaoh, is that when they were delivered, when they got ready to leave, the Egyptians came to them. God made the Egyptians come to them and give them gold and wealth. They gave them what they had because they were like, look, we tired of y'all. God and you know, the death angel has come during the Passover, right? And we didn't have blood on our door, has killed our first child. So God made them give them the wealth that they needed. So when they went into the wilderness with more than what they had when they were enslaved, right? And so that tells me that God always makes sure that He takes care of His own, right? When you read, the book of Kings, and you had the prophet in there with the widow of Zarephath, right? As he told Ahab it's gonna rain, and Ahab was like, I'm not gonna do what God wants me to do, right? And this was Elijah the prophet, the Tishbite, and God caused Elijah to be taken care of in every phase of his prophecy, um, life as a prophet in that time in 1 Kings chapter 17. God makes sure He's taken care of. So that's what we want all of you to make sure that you are taken care of. And we do know, we don't believe, we know without a shadow of a doubt that when God gives you something, God will also give you the means to be able to manage what He has given you. And when we come back from this break, we're going to help you get a full understanding of some of the things that you need to do to make sure that your wealth and the blessings that God has given you will never run dry. See you back in a minute. Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Wealth. And today's show, we are talking about never run dry. How you can make sure that your wealth continues to flow for you once you retire and for this generations that are coming behind you. We don't want you to ever run out, ever run dry, because we believe that God is a God that will continuously supply. And our example about that, as I spoke to you in the beginning segment toward the end, about Elijah and during the time when he was a prophet and Ahab was the king, and he prophesied against Ahab because Ahab was living in opposition to what God desired him to do. And God told Elijah to tell Ahab that it's not going to rain for 3 years. And when Elijah did that, God ended up supplying him food. And then one of the examples, Elijah had to go and live with a widow, and this widow was living on her last. You know, it hadn't been raining, so when you don't have rain, then you don't have crops growing, you don't have supply. But Elijah was obedient to God, lived with the widow, and told the widow how God would work for her. And she had a barrel of meal, and long story short, Elijah being there, being obedient, allowing the widow to take care of him. The widow being obedient to the prophet of God, feeding the prophet and being obedient to do what the prophet said do. As she dipped down into her barrel of wheat, barrel of meal, it was constantly filled up. And this was supernatural because she was obedient. And this is why we say, entitled the show, Never Run Dry. Because when you are obedient to God in managing the resources that you have, and you listen to those that speak from God, then you won't ever run out. You will always be supplied for. Now, everybody's supply is at a different level. And nobody has the same amount of finances, right? Me being a pastor, Wilbur being a financial advisor, he manages money. You know, I'm still striving, working for more money. He manages my money. And so just by a result of, his occupation and what he does, he manages more than what I manage personally in his business, and manages more business wise than I manage business wise, right? But the key is management. The key is God's blessings and God's favor. And the key is being a good steward and being obedient to what God desires for all of us to do. So we're going to give you some advice from faith standpoint. That was faith. Now we're going to give you some advice from the financial standpoint about these. And we want you also to understand that, what we give you when we talk about these things, may not be exact all the time, right? But these are recommendations. This is for educational purposes. This is to give you examples of things that you can do. But understand that what you have to do to get specific is you must set up a consultation with Hamilton Wealth Advisors for yourself to know exactly how you can lay out a plan that your money won't run dry, because your retirement age may be different from mine, and it may be different from your husband, your wife, your friends, whatever your family structure looks like. So you can't judge things based off of who you live with, who you work with, even though your employer has the same amount of contribution to your retirement plan or your pension plan or whatever you may have with your employer, and one of your coworkers is saying, "Hey, I'm doing this." Well, if you don't know your coworker's full situation, everybody doesn't tell you everything about what they have going on, and as a matter of fact, you don't tell everybody about what you have going on. And then, and I'm gonna leave it right here with, but I'm gonna go ahead and say this too. As a matter of fact, many of us don't even have a full understanding of what we have going on. We hadn't taken the time to sit down with the person that manages the fund at the job, at your employer, to make sure that your contributions are there. You get the statement coming to your home and you don't even open up the statement and take a look at it. And so that's why you need to contact Hamilton Wealth Advisors so that you can bring those statements to somebody that can help you understand them. And because the reason that we run away from that is because we don't understand it, and the things that we don't understand, we run away from. But we want you to run to it. You have help. You have help here at Closing the Gap Podcast, and you have help at Hamilton Wealth Advisors, people that are well trained that can help you get a plan where your finances will never run dry.
Well, absolutely. First and foremost, we always say, when you know better, you do
Do
better.
better.
But I do know our people perish due to lack of knowledge. So,
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, we're here,
Yeah.
Hamilton Weather Advisors, because we don't want our people to perish. We don't want there to be a lack of knowledge. But the only way we can give people the knowledge is give us a call.
Yeah.
So give us a call, contact us, set up a meeting, set up an appointment, and we just want to share information and share knowledge and wisdom with you. And at the end of the day, I've always been told you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. So we just want to make sure that you at least have some water to drink. Whether or not you drink it is up to you. But I'm gonna make sure that we can provide you, with a cup of water. So at the end of the day, we always want to make sure that we're doing our part. And unfortunately, that used to be one of the things I used to struggle with early in my career. I was trying to give so much information, and I felt like the people that needed the help the most didn't want to take it. And thankfully, I had a great brother in my life, Bishop Carter. He said, "Man, Will," he said, "I get up and I preach every Sunday, and I know during the week as a pastor, I minister to the sick and shut in. I minister to people that need help and need prayer." And I get up and I preach the word that God gives me to preach on that Sunday morning. And I watch these people look back at me. And at the end of the service, I open up the doors of the church for those people to turn their life over to Christ or to come down for prayer. And I watch people sit on their hands and they don't move and they sit still after knowing what we've just dealt with and what we've prayed about throughout the course of the week. And to see them not take action, it used to bother me. But I had to get to a point where I say it ain't my situation and my responsibility to make them move. It's my responsibility just to deliver the message. So, me learning, from that, it's giving me peace in knowing that it's my responsibility to give the information, to give the knowledge, to try and provide the wisdom. I can't make them use it, but I can definitely provide it. I know at the end of the day, when me and the Lord look eye to eye, he gonna be looking at back at me say, "Man, job well done," because I know you tried to get that information. I know you were trying to provide people with the education and the resources and the information to put themselves in a better situation. So at the end of the day, we know better, we do better. And I'm constantly trying to improve my know-how so I can do even better by the people that come, through my door. So at the end of the day, we always tell people it starts with that mirror test. We all got to look in the mirror and assess our individual situation. And, we all run from that B word, called budget. But the first and foremost, we all got to know what you got coming in versus what you got going out.
Yeah.
There's no way you can have a successful retirement plan if you don't know your budget. How much money do you need in retirement? And most people, if they haven't sat down and looked at and analyzed the income versus the expenses, and once I do that analysis and I can see, what, my income is $5,000 a month, my expenses are $4,500 a month. You know what? If I want to live a little bit more comfortably, I got two choices.
Yeah.
Either I can reduce my expenses, or I can see what I need to do to increase my income. Those are my two choices. Now, the great thing is we have choices. And now we have the opportunity to figure out and decide how we want to maneuver. And that's the blessing and the beauty of life and the way God has designed things. He always gives us a choice. He blessed us with free will.
Yeah.
Now, what you do with it is up to you. But, understanding that and understanding that our job is to do that assessment. And once we look and see where we are, now we can kind of reverse engineer, things from a financial standpoint. I tell the clients when they come in, I say, well, we want to plan the end in the beginning. So at first we got to figure out, okay, what your budget is today, what we need to have. So we got our needs and we got our wants. I would tell people we got retirement and we got investments. Retirement is what I need to maintain my standard of living for the rest of my life. Investments what I got left over after I've secured that. So a lot of times when people hear it, they say, well, you don't invest in the retirement bucket? I said, well, I didn't say that, did I? I said, I just create two buckets called retirement and investments. Inside of the retirement bucket, we have certain goals and obligations that we have to meet that we don't have in the investment bucket. In the retirement bucket, I need some guarantees. I need some certainty. I need some for sure money. I don't need the I don't know money. I got to make sure that this is on time and on point at all times, because the mortgage is all the time. The power bill, the water bill, the gas bill, the food bill, the travel and the insurance. Those are constants. Those, regardless of what happens, those are going to come to me every month. And I know y'all bills come just like mine do. Every month, you get hit with another one and another one and another one. The investment money is for situational occurrences. What kind of vacation do you want to go on? Is one of your kids getting married? Do you want to help a child, buy a car? Do you want to help a child with a down payment on a home? Do you want to, leave some money for grandkids? Those are things that we would like to do.
Yeah.
But those are optional items. This retirement is mandatory.
Yeah.
We got to have a roof over our head. We got to have food to put in our stomach. We have to have money for prescription drug medications to survive and live. So, we got to make sure that we have satisfied and secure retirement. And then we can enjoy the investments later on. And you all start with making sure that you understand what the need is first. And once we have analyzed and figured out, okay, I need this amount of money because my bills are that amount of money. Now I can figure out, based on what I have, what can I do? I may see with a plan that based on where I'm at right now, I've satisfied what I need to take care of my retirement. Now, you may not have anything left over for investments, but as long as the retirement is satisfied, now you have the opportunity to make a change and an adjustment to try and create some additional investments to create some additional experiences. But if we don't guarantee this part, we'll never see that part. So we have to take care and keep the main thing the main thing. So the first thing we have to do is create guaranteed streams of income. We got to have for sure money coming in. So thankfully we have Social Security as a stream of income. Now, Social Security could have some modifications that could be made in the next 6 to 8 years, depending on, how things kind of move. And if the Social Security Administration decides to make some changes to make sure that there's no reduction in benefits, because actually we are looking at, on the pace we're on right now, a reduction in benefits possibly by 25 to 30% in the next 6 to 8 years.
Okay.
But the Social Security situation in itself will still be there. It just may be a reduction in benefits.
Okay.
So, but we're still a stream of income that's going to be there. Now, we have our own 401ks, or if you're lucky enough to have a pension, that is your for sure money. That's money that you're going to have and you can control exactly what it's going to be. You control how many years you decide to work at this particular company and put into this job to get your pension to a certain level. You decide how much money you put into your 401k based on the matching contribution this company is giving before you retire, so you can achieve enough to create some guaranteed stream of income. So once I have that, now I utilize certain products and certain opportunities to create guarantees. And I hate to tell people, most of the products they use to get there are not the products that's going to keep them there. And that's where a lot of the issues happen for a lot of people. That's where a lot of the uncertainty comes in at, because they try to use the same thing that got them there to keep them there. So most people obviously have invested in their 401k, been investing heavy in the stock market. They've been investing heavy in certain S&P 500 mutual funds and these things. And those opportunities are great for growth. That helps grow your wealth. Absolutely. So you need to be participating in those opportunities while you're in your working years and your accumulation phase of life. That's, just say 30 to, 55, almost 60. Those are your accumulation years.
Okay.
Once you get really 60 and beyond, you're moving into what we call the distribution phase of life. So we have accumulation and we have distribution.
Okay.
So we want to make sure that we maximize accumulation. So we got to invest a certain way. But once we transition into distribution, and now we're trying to make sure that we have that income coming in that's stable and secure, then we can't use the stock market to create guarantees because it's not a guarantee providing opportunity.
Okay.
You have to be involved in certain types of guaranteed annuities, certain types of fixed index annuities. If you want to be in the market, you have to look at certain types of REITs, or if you have to be certain types of stocks that are dividend paying stocks that may be highly appreciated. So you have to look at the right types of opportunities that provide income. And unfortunately, those are not the products that we focus most of our time and energy on for the bulk of our lifetime. So when we get to the distribution phase of life, and it now requires us to do something different, we don't like different because we don't like change. It's not familiar. It's not comfortable. So people can get caught up in, well, I'm used to making 10% a year. I'm used to making 12% a year. Well, you needed to make that in your accumulation phase to get to this point. But at some point in time, you have to understand that you've won the race. But that's where the plan comes in at. Because you didn't define what you needed to win the race, you keep running the race. And all of a sudden we have a, 2008 crash. We have a pandemic. We have a Russia-Ukraine. We have a Israel-Iran where the market takes a swift drop. And all of a sudden you lose too much too fast. And all of a sudden you're in a position where you don't have your for sure money anymore because it was never for sure. It was always, I don't know. Because the market is, I don't know. It's going to fluctuate. So because we know it's going to fluctuate, we know at any given point in time, there could be a reduction in income. So why not make sure we put a portion of our funds that can provide the opportunity to create guaranteed income into those products that can provide that. So now we can have our Social Security, we can maybe have our pension, and we move a portion of our 401k IRA into a fixed income product that provides guarantees. So now that I know I have guaranteed income coming in, I now have one thing that's the most valuable thing that I think you can have, which is peace of mind.
Okay.
And what happens most times is people usually don't have to use all of their money to create peace of mind. The problem is they haven't done their due diligence and don't have a plan to understand exactly how much it's going to take to create the peace of mind. So in most situations, by the time most people retire, they have this bucket over here and they have the income over there. Well, but they keep all of it growing in the market. And all of a sudden it comes tumbling down. And all of a sudden what could have been a certainty is now turned into a tragedy because you don't have the necessary income you have coming in, because you're trying to fill up a bucket with a hole in it when you're trying to take income from a investment portfolio. Because if I lose, give people an example, if I have $500,000 and I lose 50%, I'm now at 250. But the income need I had is fixed and guaranteed. If I was already taking out, just say $25,000 a year from that account to supplement my Social Security that I was already receiving, and that's what I lived on. That's what I needed, that $25,000 to supplement. And that $500,000 on a portfolio, that was 5%. Was that $25,000? Well, now that we lost 50% in the market, like most people did, and a lot of people did back in 2008, now all of a sudden, when we take 25,000 out of 250, that's 10%. So now you're pulling 10% to cover the same bills. So how much longer do we have to make this money last if now we're having to pull out the equivalent of 10% to make back up? Well, guess what? Because we're in retirement, we're not going to invest the same way. We have to be a little bit more cautious with the way we're moving. So when do we ever make back up the losses based on the gains? It's not going to happen because of the income we're having to take out at this particular point in time being so much higher than what it used to be. So that's why I tell people, you have to understand where to put your money, not just how much money you need to have, because it takes money to make money. And when you get to retirement, you can't fill up a bucket with a hole in it. We'll see you back after this break.
Welcome back to Closing the Gap Podcast. We give you the truth about wealth In today's show, we've been talking about how to never run dry. Make sure that you have the income that you need once you hit retirement, and then also not only for you at retirement, but then for the generations that are coming after you, and whatever your overall plan is. We want it to be ever flowing. As you said, Wilbert, you can't pour into buckets with holes in it and expect that you're going to be able to spin or go back to get that out, right? So we want to make sure that you have a good bucket, essentially, and then if you do have some holes in your bucket, all you have to do is first and foremost pray and talk to God about, uh, Lord, how did these holes get into my bucket? Because oftentimes we've been the ones that poke the holes in our own buckets and don't even realize how we've been poking the holes in our buckets because we perish due to a lack of knowledge, right? And that's part of the perishing is our resources perish. Many people don't want to die. Many people don't want to fail, right? It's not intentional that people fail. It's usually because of that lack of knowledge, that we oftentimes fail. It wasn't our plan to fail, but we fail to plan
Yes.
for success. And so that's what we want everybody to do now is take the recommendations that you're receiving today from Mr. Hamilton and then contact the team at Hamilton Wealth Advisors so that you can go more in depth about how investing works and how these plans work and how you can make sure that you have a firm bucket that is not holy. Now, we want everybody to be holy spiritually, but we don't want your bucket to be holy. All right? Don't want your bucket to be holy. That's a little lame joke right there. If it just flowed out, so we might just edit that out, maybe not. But back to back to the lecture at hand. So essentially, what you gave also was somewhat of a gap calculation, right? Of what it costs for somebody to live monthly versus their guaranteed income, right? And how to live off that. And so if we looked at, you also gave some hypothetical numbers in there. You know what I'm saying, for everybody to take. So I want everybody to make sure that you listen. If you need to, if you listen on the radio and you miss some of it, you can always go to our YouTube page at Closing the Gap, The Truth, and rewatch the show and go to this spot and re-listen to what Mr. Hamilton said to gain a clearer understanding of how you can make sure that you don't have a gap in your retirement, and to make sure that it doesn't run dry. So the important thing is that we take the time to look ourselves in the mirror. Looking ourselves in the mirror. The thing about the mirror is it tells us whether or not how we feel is actually true.
Yes.
Right? Because oftentimes people feel good about their retirement plans and their financial situations, but oftentimes feelings can fool you.
Yes.
And then when you look in the mirror, you realize that, oh, it's not what I thought it was. Or sometimes you may look in the mirror and it's better than what you thought it was, but then you still like, okay, based on I felt like it wasn't as good, but it's better. So now how can I manage the better? Or if I looked in the mirror at my finances and realized that it wasn't what I thought it was, then how do I move toward correction phase to get things done in the manner it gets done? So Wilbur, how do we you know go past just keeping those lights on, as you said earlier, when we're talking about, making sure that we don't run dry, making sure that our retirement lasts.
Well, the biggest thing's time.
Time.
That's why, people ask all the time, well, when should I get a financial advisor, or when should I start doing a retirement plan? And I always say, the day you start working. They look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, well, I ain't got no money yet. I'm like, well, do you want to plan to have some? The best time to plan is before you get it, right? So in any plan for anything, you don't start, you know, you don't get the instructions on how to bake a cake after you start. You get it before. You get the plan on how to bake the cake before you get the ingredients. So you know exactly what to go and buy. You know exactly how many eggs, how much milk, what kind of butter, you know, what kind of chocolate chips, or what kind of, cake flavor, what all the do you want You want sour cream icing, you want buttercream, you want cream cheese. What you want on your cake?
Yeah.
You have to decide that ahead of time. And it works the same way in finances.
Okay.
You have to decide, okay, where do you want to end up? Is just enough okay? For some people it is. For some people it's not. Well, guess what? The biggest factor in making money is always time.
Mm-hmm.
And the more time I have, the more flexibility I have, the more choices I have, but also the less I have to give in order to get there, because the greatest factor, of course, in making money is that time for that money to compound and grow. So the earlier, the better. But all is not lost if you've wasted some of your time. And
Mm-hmm.
we all have.
Mm-hmm.
We all have that. Man, if I knew then what I know now, I'd be a lot better off. And of course, I even say that to myself, like,
Yeah,
man,
me as well.
when you know better, you do better. But the best thing to do is, once you do have that awakening and God taps you on the shoulder and say, get it together, don't ignore the tap on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep ignoring God, because He's telling you what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to go ahead and act on it. So once you decide that, and you sit down and you have the conversation, and now you get the education first and foremost on how the investment world just works overall. You get rid of the misnomers. You get rid of the myths and the fallacies and the things that you've heard from coworkers and friends and family and people who are not trained professionals on how things actually work. When you get rid of the, oh, I thought I was going to double my money in 2 weeks, or I thought I was going, I wanted to flip it and I wanted to be good in 6 months, and understand it doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process,
Mm-hmm.
and anything worth having is worth working for.
Yeah.
And easy come, easy go.
Go.
So understanding that, what is the art of delayed gratification? It's the art of dollar cost averaging, the art of putting my money in consistently, because consistently doing things over a long period of time are what's going to give you success. And you consistently participating in your employer's 401k plan, getting that matching contribution, maximizing your contribution,
Mm-hmm.
understanding your budget early on.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you understand before you start spending all your money what this money could actually do for you, you might not spend it.
Mm-hmm.
If you knew that, you know what? Instead of buying this extra pair of shoes every week,
Mm-hmm.
or instead of spending all my money on this purse or these clothes or whatever it may be, or for guys they like to go to the club, or they drink excessively or do other participate in other activities.
Yeah.
If you knew what that money could do for you,
Mm-hmm.
if you knew that money would help you retire 5 years sooner,
Mm-hmm.
if you knew that money would put you in a situation where you could retire comfortably at 55 and never have to work again, if you knew this money will put you in a position where you can put down payments all of all of your kids' houses and pay for your daughter's weddings, if you knew what this money could do for setting up your kids and your grandkids and putting them in a situation where they could have life a little bit easier than you had it and a little bit better than you had it, what would you do? So when we know better, we usually do better.
Yeah.
But in order to know better, we got to sit down and have the conversation and get rid of a lot of myths and the fallacies that a lot of our community have about investing in money, and how dangerous it is, and how risky it is, and the risk is you not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yeah.
greatest risk,
Yeah.
because we've all seen the studies on people are living longer. You know, and we've already said that, there are more people that fear run out of money than fear death.
Yeah.
So do you want to be living longer with less money? That's living in more fear.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we want to be in a situation where, because people are living longer, because medical and technology is advancing things and allowing people to live, longer, better lives, so to speak. We want to live comfortable during that time frame.
Right.
And we need money in order to do that. We see the cost of everything rising around us tremendously. So if I can start planning at 30, 35, that allows me to be able to invest less and still get a whole lot more, because I have 25, 30 years of growth ahead of me. I got time for the money to, flip once, twice, 3 times, because I can look at the rule of 72, which says if I average 10%, my money will double every 7 years, 7.2 years, or if I average 7%, my money will double every 10 years. So, if I understand that, now I know, okay, well, based on what I want to have and based on the lifestyle I want to live, I'll need the income of, of if my income is 5,000 a day, I need to prepare for my income to need to be 10,000 30 years from now, because we got to factor in inflation. I got to factor in cost of living adjustments. I got to, those are things that we do.
Right.
When people come in our doors, they say, well, Mr. Hamilton, why did you put this income need at 10,000 a month in 2055? I said, well, right now in 2026, you're living on 5,000 a month. What you think the cost of things is going to be in, 2056, 30 years from now? The costs are going to go up. So this is only comparable.
Right.
There was a study that was actually just done that if you look at what was the average salary comp of 50,000 26 years ago, what would that be equivalent to today? The comp is $100,000. Wow. So in 26 years, 25 years roughly,
Double.
the comp is double what it used to be. It used to be the goal was to make $50,000 a year. Then the goal used to be, well, I want to get you $100,000 a year. Well, that is the equivalent. So in 2050, what do we think it's going to be? It's going to be 200,000. It's going to be the equivalent of 100,000. Because I hate to tell people, but costs ain't going down. Ain't no company under the sun going to start charging you less money based on what you already paying today. The costs are only going to get more expensive. Because if you bought it at today's price, they're going to wait and see in a couple of years if you can buy it at tomorrow's. And then it's going to go up again. And as long as you buy it, that price is going to remain the same. It's never going to go down. We all think back to, man, I remember gas was 99 cents. I remember being a senior in high school. And, man, if I had $20 on the weekend, I had a great time.
Yeah.
If I got to Friday, I had $20 in my pocket, that means, hey, I could put 10 gallons of gas in my tank for $10. That means I had friends that worked at the movies, so I get the movies for free. Hey, McDonald's had 2 for 2. So, man, I could eat good, go to movies, and I got gas to drive all over town and enjoy myself all weekend on $20. Nowadays, we all know you put $20 in your gas tank, you hope it don't laugh at you.
Man.
You lucky if they need a move.
Yeah.
When you put $20 in your gas tank, with gas
car.
being $5 a gallon. So, things change, things adjust. So we have to adjust with them. That's why the planning is so important. So we have to understand, we have to be more active in our investments. We have to be more knowledgeable. We have to participate. Because if we're participating, that means we're going to experience and we're going to learn, which means we're going to actually see how things work. The problem with too many of us is we're not participating to actually see for ourselves how this works. And we're just hearing and listening to somebody else's bad experience. Because I tell people all the time, I say, look, the market doesn't care about your feelings. The market is there to provide results. Now, some days are good, some days are bad. But the goal in anything is to win more than you lose.
Yeah.
The market is up way more than it's down. Now, are you going to feel it when it's down? Absolutely. But you're going to be a whole lot happier when you experience it throughout the ups. So you have to be participating in the game in order to actually be able to win the game. And far too many of us are sitting on the sideline thinking we can save our way to success. And it's just not possible because of inflation and the cost of living adjustments. Because if you're not getting a return on your investment, there's no way you're going to keep up with the average cost of goods and services. We look at what the average inflation has been around 3% or better. Well, actually been higher than that for the last, 5 or 6 years. And normal inflation has been around 2.5 or so percent. We've had extremely high inflation recently. So, if you just leave your money in the bank, are you getting that? You're not making anything on it. So unfortunately, if you're not participating in the game, you have no chance at winning the game. And this is how we continue to get further and further behind, even though if you look at from an income earning standpoint, we're a lot better than what we used to be. The problem is what we do with the money when we get it.
Yeah.
The problem is not leaving, inheritance to kids so they can start off in a position where they can move to investing versus getting out of a hole. See, most generations are having to get out of a hole because the previous generation didn't leave any assets. So because there was no retirement planning and we had to literally drain all the assets because we didn't income plan, we didn't tax plan, we didn't investment plan. All of a sudden, we didn't healthcare plan, we didn't long-term care plan, which basically means the estate plan became useless and we didn't need it. So when we talk, people say, well, you need a trust. They say, well, why do I need a trust? I just get a will. Well, that's because we haven't been passing on no assets. That's because we haven't had anything to put in a trust. Well, in the reality is we had a home, so we should have been putting that in the trust. And we should have had some kind of life insurance there should have been in the trust as well to pass on, because when you pass on a home, you still passing on the bill, whether you like it or not, because there's property taxes, there's maintenance, there's, utility bills that still have to be paid. So you giving somebody a house ain't necessarily doing them no service. It's a nice gesture, but I always tell my clients now, I said, do your kids want your house or they want your money? They're going to sell the house for the money. So how about figure out how to maximize both and put them in a situation where you leave them enough money where now they can maximize the value on the house. Because see, what happens to us is we don't leave them no money, but we leave them the house, but the house costs money. So they end up giving away the house for little to no money.
Right.
But then we wonder why our communities
Blight,
and get taken down and transferred, and we look up and what happened? We see them go down, 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 and all of a sudden, by the time we look back at it, it's been revitalized and we've been priced out. And all of a sudden, we're like, well, what happened? Well, we gave it away for pennies on the dollar. And it's the most valuable real estate in mostly every major city.
Yeah.
You look at where we populated the downtowns of every major city. But what did they do? They slowly but surely try to push us out. And they go back in and they buy it up. And they revitalize it. And they take that same building. They gave somebody $50,000 for it. And that same building turned into a 2-3 story condo for $500,000. And we look and say, man, why is our wealth dwindling and their wealth accumulating? Well, it's all on the lack of planning that is taking place from a retirement standpoint, because we're not doing the planning that's necessary in order to be successful. There's no way to be successful in finance without planning. I don't care how much money you got. I don't care who you are. If you don't have a financial plan, you can go from sugar to real quick. I hate to tell them, but that's what's going to happen, because people perish due to lack of knowledge. So even if you leave a large sum of money, you did the retirement plan, you left the IRA, you left the brokerage account, you left the houses, you left the extra real estate. If you don't leave a plan on how to utilize it, it's still gonna be mismanaged, because guess what? You still left a tax bill.
Yeah.
Because the IRA, just because you pass it on, don't mean the taxes disappear when you die. Taxes don't die, they transfer.
Yeah.
So the IRA, that you did a great job of investing, because we created the income bucket. We created the guaranteed streams. You had a pension, you had Social Security, so we were able to maintain standard of living. And you did have the additional investments where you allowed us to grow this wealth over here as well, but you didn't create a plan on how to utilize it. Now, because it passes on to the next generation and you set up a trust, and that's great, but you didn't have a plan for the next generation on how to utilize those assets. You didn't teach them that, hey, you know what? This money is taxable. So if you utilize this money, it's going to be taxed to you as ordinary income. So don't take it all at one time.
Yeah.
Let's stretch it out over a few years. Let's properly, place this money here. Let's make sure that we pay the taxes on this property. Let's make sure that kids understand, because a lot of times, a lot of kids don't know homes have property taxes because they've never paid them before. And if I've never experienced having to take care of this, I'm not going to know how to take care of this. If my kids have been renters and been living in apartments, and all of a sudden I pass away, why am I expecting them to know how to handle the house? They've never bought a house. They've never sold a house. They've never participated in that process. So they know nothing about how to go out and get an appraisal. They know nothing about how to make sure they go and get some comps in the area to see, okay, well, what are things going for now? Even if you left them the money, you're leaving them a ticking time bomb that is going to blow up in their face, because assets with no guidance lead to distress. And if you don't know, you better ask somebody. And we'll see you back here after next time.